Hi, everyone. This is Janice. I don't know if you can hear me.
We can.
But my camera is not working. I'm at home, so you've just got my picture, my old picture of me and my old dog. But
Okay.
I'm here.
Thank you, Janice.
We are live.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sage Turner, Chair of the Housing and Community Development Committee. I'd like to welcome you to the October 17th, 2023 remote meeting. All council members and staff are participating virtually. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. To help our audience follow along, I'll be stating each section of the agenda aloud. We are streaming live on our Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city's website. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone by calling 855-925-2801. The meeting code is 9791. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. We also have the option for people to call in and comment live today during the meeting. To do so, you will use the same number, 855-925-2801, and meeting code 9791. At that point, your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. Speakers will need to push *3 to enter the speaker queue. Okay, I'm going to do a quick roll call and introduce all the committee members and staff who are participating today. Council and staff, as I say your name, please come off mute and say a quick hello. Councilwoman Antoinette Mosley.
Good morning.
Councilwoman Shanika Smith.
Good morning.
Assistant City Manager Rachel Wood.
Good morning.
Community Economic Development Director Nikki Reed.
Good morning.
Homeless Strategy Division Manager Emily Ball.
Good morning.
And Community Development Manager Dennis Newbern.
Good morning.
And Assistant City Attorney Janice Ashley.
Good morning, everyone.
All right, great. So we're going to move to our agenda. We have three things on the agenda today. And first up always is approval of the previous minutes. If everyone's had a chance to look at them, if there's no changes or comments, if I could get a motion.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, because we're virtual, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilwoman Mosley.
Aye.
Councilwoman Smith.
Aye.
Myself, Sage, aye, and the minutes are approved. Okay, we're moving on to item number 2 of 3 on the agenda today, which is Code Purple, an update from Emily Ball. Emily, take it away.
Good morning. Glad to be with you all this morning. It's timely to talk about Code Purple on a chilly fall morning, so I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Key takeaways about Code Purple. As you are familiar with, Code Purple is a longstanding community initiative to provide life-saving emergency shelter for folks who are experiencing homelessness during extreme weather conditions. This year, Code Purple has begun. As of October 15th, Code Purple shelter is available, and shelter is provided this year by ABCCM and Salvation Army. This year's plan includes 16 more beds than were available last year and an expanded definition of Code Purple that will provide more shelter nights than our community has ever had in the Code Purple initiative. Both the city and the county have budgeted matching funds to support Code Purple operations again this fiscal year, and the county has requested that the city administer their funds. The funding request process was routed through the Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee as our Continuum of Care Governance Board. They approved the funding request received from ABCCM, and I'll talk more about that. And so staff are recommending that the city enter into an interlocal agreement with the county to administer their funds and enter into a funding agreement with ABCCM to provide Code Purple shelter this winter season. Code Purple will also be augmenting the recently funded year-round 43 shelter beds, which are under contract or being contracted now and should be available in the next several weeks. And I'll share an update about that. So Code Purple, background in 2009, local shelter providers began the Code Purple initiative to provide extra emergency shelter beds with fewer requirements during freezing temperatures. So during Code Purple events, barriers like ID requirements or sobriety requirements are lowered in order to ensure safety and to save lives is the objective of Code Purple. Shelter participation is voluntary, and the Code Purple shelter providers have varied year after year. Traditionally, the Homeless Coalition calls Code Purple when the forecast indicates that the temperature will be at or below 32 degrees. And as our community is restructuring the continuum of care, and the continuum of care board is taking an increasing leadership role on the issue of homelessness in our community, the Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee, HIAC, which is our current COC board, has taken increasing responsibility in ensuring that Code Purple options are available. So this year, staff have convened and facilitated the planning process in partnership with both the Homeless Coalition and HIAC. Basic highlights from the plan for the 23-24 winter season. Again, Code Purple is available as of October 15th and will run through April 30th of this year. And beds available will be at ABCCM's Veterans Restoration Quarters. That'll be 50 beds, which is the same number that they had available last year. ABCCM will also have beds at Transformation Village. They'll have 25 beds available this year. Last year, they had 50 beds available at Transformation Village, but the highest census they had on any night in that location was 18. So even though those numbers are a little different, it's in no way a loss of capacity at Transformation Village. And then new this winter, we have Salvation Army participating with 16 beds. That's a great capacity addition, particularly to have those beds spread out across different geographies in our community. And importantly, there's overflow capacity available at all locations if needed. So those numbers that you see there are kind of baseline capacity, but in extreme situations, last year we had that Arctic front that came through around the holidays. ABCCM was able to flex their capacity in that situation. We have the same flexibility from these shelter providers again this year. And then one change, an exciting change, I think, is that Code Purple, again, will be available when the temperature is 32 or below based on the forecast on weather.gov. That's no change from the past. But what is new this year is that Code Purple will also be available when the temperature is 33 to 40 degrees with precipitation. And Homeless Coalition leaders and shelter providers will coordinate when the forecast indicates those conditions to make that decision and then communicate that out to the community, to providers, to folks who are seeking shelter through those regular channels. So that should mean additional nights of Code Purple are available this year when it's cold and wet, even if that threshold of 32 and below is not met. Again, as in the past, Homeless Coalition leaders will call Code Purple 48 hours in advance, and they'll announce that via email. Community folks can be added to their distribution list, and I've included that email address here. Would certainly encourage anyone who's interested to join that distribution list so that you can receive those notifications directly. When they issue those notifications here at the city, we will post that information on the city's website and on the Harris Cherokee Center marquee, and the county will share that information out via their text alert system. One addition this year is that ABCCM will also manage a dedicated phone line with a recorded message so that people can call in to find out if Code Purple shelter is available. So really trying to be as creative and widespread as possible about communicating out when Code Purple is available and what those options are. As in the past, ART will provide free transit to and from Code Purple locations, and both community responders and community paramedics will be able to assist with transportation when needed for folks who may have a hard time accessing public transit or outside of traditional hours. All of the information operationally and procedurally for Code Purple is in the Code Purple manual that has been shared out with the community, is available on the Code Purple page of the Homeless Strategy Division section on the city's website. So again, really want to be sure that our community is equipped with information about how Code Purple will work and what shelter options are available this year. Funding. So again, last year, both the city and the county budgeted funds to support Code Purple operations for the first time and have done so again this fiscal year. The city's approved budget this fiscal year includes $50,000 for Code Purple, and the county has budgeted to match city funding. Buncombe County has also requested that the city administer their Code Purple funding, same thing that we did last year for this initiative. So the county has provided an interlocal agreement to that effect for consideration. And city staff published the combined $100,000 funding opportunity on the city's website, announced that opportunity at HIAC and at Code Purple planning meetings, and then distributed notice to community partners through the HIAC distribution list. We received one funding request from ABCCM for the full $100,000. Salvation Army indicated that they have the ability to absorb Code Purple costs in their regular operating budget. As you know, they are one of the shelters that was recently funded through ARPA, the ARPA request of both the city and the county. And so through that capacity, they'll be able to absorb these Code Purple costs. Following our typical HIAC process, the funding allocations work group of HIAC reviewed the request that was received and did recommend full funding to HIAC. And then at their October 12th meeting, HIAC unanimously approved recommending $100,000 for ABCCM for Code Purple operations. I mentioned earlier that that Code Purple beds are a supplement, or in addition to the recently funded 43 new emergency shelter beds. Wanted to share a brief, brief update on that. Contracts are in process with the 3 agencies that were funded through city and county ARPA funds to add a combined 43 emergency shelter beds for a full year, so not weather dependent. That is 3 beds at Haywood Street. They are finishing up construction right now and anticipate those beds being online by the end of the month. 20 beds through Safe Shelter. Safe Shelter has had a number of operational changes from their original proposal, so we'll be sharing updates on that soon. We actually have a shelter work group meeting scheduled for tomorrow to hear updates from them, and we'll be able to share that back. And then Salvation Army will be adding 20 beds and preserving their existing 45 beds. So those 45 beds, of course, are currently online, and they're anticipating that the 20 beds will be online by the beginning of November. That's contingent on hiring staff, which they're working on right now. So again, key takeaways, Code Purple is up and running. I think we have a really good plan. I think we have great partnerships across the community in this. More beds available, should have more nights available of Code Purple. So I think it's an encouraging, we're at an encouraging point as we come into the new winter season. And then the suggested motion, the requested motion is to move forward the interlocal agreement and the contract with ABCCM for providing Code Purple shelter.
Thank you, Emily. Wonderful information. Councilwoman Antoinette.
Hey, my question isn't about what you just presented. It just a question just occurred to me. Do any other municipalities in the county also offer programs similar to Code Purple? And if so, does the county partner with any of those other municipalities?
I don't believe so.
So the only place for shelter beds during the cold is in the city of Asheville. Okay.
There might be other partner orgs. Like one of the things I was going to ask is where is Western North Carolina Rescue Mission on this? Because they're doing Code Purple or something, but they're they didn't need the funding, or they didn't.
They're not participating in Code Purple this year, so they won't be. Yeah, you know, the Code Purple shelters have varied over the years. Historically, all shelters participated a bit in Code Purple to varying degrees, but I don't think it was particularly consistent across locations. And then in the pandemic, just everything changed, and we had those dedicated locations for Code Purple that were stood up, and then we've had a different planning process since then. So Code Purple participating shelters this year are just ABCCM and Salvation Army. I will say in the past, Swannanoa Valley Christian Ministry has provided a nightly winter shelter. So that's a bit different from Code Purple, but they have had that capacity. They discontinued that first year of the pandemic because of COVID concerns and have not brought that back so far.
What about the church in West Asheville that does some kind of emergency sheltering?
I think you might be referring to Trinity United Methodist. And so they are not hosting Code Purple shelter.
Okay.
They, year before last, I believe, was their first year providing what they called winter shelter, which was nightly shelter, not weather specific, and just through the winter season. That morphed into winter safe shelter last year, which landed at West Asheville Presbyterian. You know, that church is closed, and so that building was vacant, and they were able to be in that spot. And that has now morphed into Safe Shelter, which is one of those 3 shelters that's looking to add beds through that expansion. And they're working on some operational updates. They've had a lot of changes in the last couple of months, and so we'll be hearing more from them about what their operational plan is. But at this point, there's not a plan to host shelter at Trinity United Methodist.
Okay, thank you. And wonderful news about the updated temperatures. I know that was a call for a long time, that And why do we wait till it's 32 degrees and freezing? So great work. One last question for you, and I'm not sure if other councilwomen have any, but just generally speaking, we talked about doing more pit counts a year. Are we doing them quarterly? Would October be one if we were doing them quarterly? Are we not doing them? Or?
We're not doing them quarterly at this point. We had discussed adding a summer count because our longtime perception has been that the population really fluctuates during the summer, but we don't actually have data to confirm that. There's not been discussion about a quarterly pit count. So at this point, the next count will be in January, and it's always it's the last Tuesday in January. I don't have that date in front of me, but it'll be coming up in January.
Great. Thank you for joining us, Emily. Any other questions, Councilwoman? Shanika, no?
No questions. I'll make a motion.
Okay, go for it.
I recommend the city council authorize the city manager to enter into an interlocal agreement with Buncombe County to administer their matching Code Purple funding and to execute a funding agreement with Asheville Buncombe Community Christian Ministry in the amount of $100,000 to provide Code Purple emergency shelter this winter.
I'll second.
Okay, and virtual, so we'll do a roll call vote. Councilwoman Mosley.
Aye.
Councilwoman Smith.
Aye.
Myself, aye. So that vote will pass and move on to council for consideration. Thank you, everyone, and Emily for being here today. And that concludes item number 2. So we're moving on to item number 3 in our agenda, which is a Housing and Urban Development Consolidated Plan Amendment regarding CDBG. And I believe we have Dennis leading us through that. Is that right? All right. Go ahead, Dennis. Thank you. You are muted, actually.
That would probably help a little bit. With respect to what we're going to be talking about today, I want to draw a parallel between the use of community development block grant funds, for that matter, the many uses of community development block grant funds that Asheville has had, along with this one very special project, 108 Patton, what we're doing and why we're doing it. Next slide, please. So the key takeaways associated with this activity are as follows. The city Asheville has $300,000 in community development block grant funds that need to be reallocated and fully expended by April 2024 in order to meet Department of Housing and Urban Development timeliness requirements. Staff is recommending the use of funds to complete a downtown sidewalk project known as 108 Patton Street. Using the funds on an eligible city project poses the highest chance for success to ensure timely use of the funds. Other opportunities were evaluated. However, federal requirements, including federal prevailing wage and environmental review requirements for CDBG funds, eliminated these options for consideration. Lastly, a public hearing was scheduled, actually was held for the October 24th City Council meeting, amending the Housing and Community Development Consolidated Plan for the following reasons. 1, reallocation of CDBG funds for 108 Patton Street, modifications for Helpmate's prior grant award, and modifications to Homeward Bound's prior grant award. These proposed changes are in direct response to improving timely performance and expenditure of federal funds. Next slide, please. So each year in May, HUD, the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, does a review of all the grantees across the United States in order to determine if grantees are spending CDBG funds in a timely manner. Generally speaking, from the time of a funded activity, there's usually a period of no more than 18 months from funding to completion. So HUD takes a look at all the activities across the United States, and in particular, the city of Asheville as well. And as a result of that, there were some things that we need to do differently. And among those things is we need to spend money very quickly. The Community Development Division identified unobligated CDBG funds. These were funds from projects that were either canceled or there was a little bit of money left over. And we've recommended undertaking activities that would allow us to spend money. Now, a couple of points here with respect to the issue of timeliness. Each year, as I said in May, the HUD does the review. And there are recommendations that have to be provided in order to make certain that we continue to comply with this requirement. There is usually a time period of 3 years that a grantee has in order to correct wrongs in this area. Within the city of Asheville, we have not met this requirement in the last 2 years. So it is very critical coming forward that by April of this year, we are able to demonstrate that we have met HUD timeliness requirements. The use of CDBG funds, and during the next meeting in November, we'll go into much more detail about this. But one of the things that you all have historically done and that the council is required to do is to basically approve a series of activities as part of a long-range plan to spend money. In layman's terms, it's called a one-year annual action plan. And the one-year annual action plan relates back to our 5-year master plan or consolidated plan. The idea behind both plans are, one, with respect to the consolidated plan, we identify activities and the sources of funds that could actually happen within the 5-year period. And the one-year plan sets forth how we're going to meet the 5-year goals that the city has established. After the submission of activities that are completed or that are undertaken, occasionally there becomes a need to make changes in that plan. And the changes that are necessary to be made are contemplated on a couple of points. One, can you get the work done within the prescribed 18-month period that we've identified? And then second, more importantly, if you have issues with timeliness, picking the projects and activities to be undertaken in whole or in part with CDBG funds that would allow the city, or the grantee in this case, to meet the required to meet the timeliness requirements. We are proposing, and we firmly believe that with respect to the types of activities that can be undertaken, the best activities are those that are considered to be that of public improvements or public works activities, curbs, sidewalks, streets, water lines, sewer lines, etc. Accessibility also falls very much into this category. So part of our discussion with you and for the previous meeting, and also as we go forward, was trying to find an activity that best represented a high use of community development block grant funds, and also to complete a project before April of next year. Patton Avenue met that and continues to meet that requirement on a whole host of fronts. One, with respect to accessibility, accessibility is a very important function of local government, and it is a very high and popular use of community development block grant funds. To undertake this activity on Patton Avenue represents the first of several projects we hope that will address the need to provide greater accessibility throughout the community, and particularly in the downtown area. Second, with respect to other types of activities that could be taken that you're familiar with, most notably public services activities that generally touch people, nutrition, healthcare, education programs. We are statutorily limited each year as to how much we can spend on that category. So public services activities, as you know them, basically ended up being something that wouldn't be in the city's best interest at this time. The other scenario is the one that you just kind of heard a conversation about a few moments ago, and that's housing. The use of CDBG funds for housing is largely prohibited. Housing support services activities, but to actually build and construct housing, long before this point in time, there have been several other federal programs that have been put in place to develop housing. The Community Development Block Grant Program was designed basically to address other needs of the community in support of housing. So with respect to the different activities that would normally be eligible, with respect to the type of activities that you basically have been familiarized with over the years, it was our opinion that doing a public works activity, such as the one from 108 Patton Street, would be the best fit for the department and would allow us the opportunity most likely to have the work completed by April of 2024. Next slide, please. Basically, with respect to the basic requirements of the Community Development Block Grant programs, there are 3 that we are required to follow. one, benefit the persons principally of low to moderate income. Second, aid in the prevention or eliminations of slums and blight. And three, meet a need having a particular urgency. Those are examples. So in every activity that we undertake, we are required by HUD to make certain that it falls within one of these particular categories. In addition to that, we have to make certain that the activities that we undertake are not found to be ineligible. And then the other part is to make certain that at least for every year that we receive community development block grant funds, that 70% of the funds will benefit persons considered to be low to moderate income, either on an individual basis or an area basis. So a little bit of background about the program, but very important as it relates to how we come up with activities and how we recommend those activities to council. Next slide. 108 Patton Street, in our opinion, meets the national objective of benefiting low to moderate income people. Under the Community Development Block Grant Program, persons who are identified with disabilities are considered to be low income. The sidewalk project, we believe, is eligible. The third point is that with respect to timeliness, we are in the best position to eliminate cross-cutting federal requirements that are generally associated when we use outside contractors. Labor standards, the environment, fair housing, all of those things are generally part of dealing with outside contract work. When we do things internally, those requirements are eliminated, especially prevailing wage. So it allows community development dollars to go much further with respect to the type of work that we're proposing. We are in a position that's subject to council approval of the amendment that we're asking for to have the Public Works Department prioritize this work and begin shortly after approval is granted, with the idea of the work on Patton Street being completed by April of next year. Next slide. Back to the timeliness standard, it is of importance that with respect to the money that we receive, HUD's position is that if we're giving you money, you have an obligation as a grantee to spend the money. The timeliness test is the basis for making certain the grantees are actually spending the money on activities that have been identified in the consolidated plan and the one-year annual action plan. The third point is the most important. It's the amount of money that's in our line of credit with the U.S. Treasury. When it exceeds this 1.5 figure, it is problematic for the grantee. It means that for whatever reasons, grantees are not moving money. And among the reasons here, we've been largely in the same boat as other communities across the United States. In the last 3 years, we have had additional money that we've had to manage for COVID, for both community development block grant funds and our sister program, the home program, along with our entitlement funds. So that's 3 different sources of HUD dollars that we've had the responsibility to kind of manage. In most cases, community development block grant funds or the entitlement program that we're talking about now have taken a back seat to other COVID initiatives because that was the most important thing pressing the community at the time. And so we find ourselves now in a situation whereby we need to spend some money. I'd like to think that with respect to, and as I said a few minutes ago, we failed the timeliness test for the second consecutive year. That is not good. So we have a real challenge and a very important responsibility to do everything we possibly can to make certain that we can move that money as quickly as possible. I've been here now for 5 months, and during that 5-month period, I've had the honor of working with some very wonderful people that are very, very concerned about making certain that we stay within good graces of our funding source, that we identify projects and activities that we can undertake along with our current portfolio that will allow us to get to a place that we need to be. And I believe that the Patton Street project on a whole bunch of levels, but for the most important, from an accessibility standpoint, it is a reaffirmation of the city's commitment to make certain that we provide equal access to all services. And then the other part of the equation is to make certain that by spending this money, that we put ourselves in the situation that we don't go into year 3 of having an issue with timeliness. Next slide. Again, Some of the other activities that I think that you might be familiar with that we historically have done with community block grant funds include rental assistance. We do not use CDBG funds for rental assistance because it is not a eligible use of funds. Compass Point Village was another activity that was discussed that as a possible activity, and it could have been. But why it was not chosen includes several different things. One, the project was already underway. Generally, with respect to a CDBG funded activity, we are involved with it from cradle to completion. All of the federal cross-cutting rules that involve the environment, labor standards, fair housing, so forth and so on are applicable as part of the planning of a project. And to come in at midstream and attempt to provide funding for this activity, knowing full well that all of the things associated with federal funds would have increased the cost significantly, was a no-brainer for us to, at this particular point, not to recommend funding for. Perhaps other phases down the road, but initially for this project, we felt like based upon all the different options that was available, the city of Asheville actually undertaking a project for city of Asheville residents in the area of accessibility made the most sense, was the most prudent, and would allow us to be in a situation whereby contingent upon getting a good start on this, that we could have the work done by April of next year. Next slide. The other thing that's very, very important from the community development block grant perspective, as well as from the city of Asheville, is community engagement. Very happy that the level of community engagement was really, really important for this project. And as you can note by the slide, there were several things that we're doing, that we've done, including one other event that we will do today in the attempt to try to communicate to the public, the importance of undertaking this project and what the benefit will be. Jack of the Wood, is that the name of the location today? At 3 o'clock this afternoon, we'll be there from 3 o'clock until 5 o'clock. And all of these things are kind of a prelude to appearing before council next week to receive approval on our request for an amendment to our program. Next slide. With respect to the issue of timing this, part of my function here has been to lay out a plan for management of how we're going to do things differently. As I said, COVID was a major factor. Staffing or lack thereof was a major factor. But with respect to developing a plan, I'd like to think that the things that are listed here on this slide, including the fact that we need to do a better job of soliciting and selecting projects that we believe are consistent with the goals of the program, low mod benefit, elimination of slums and blight, urgent needs, but also to make certain on the front end that we're able to complete those projects within a time period of less than 18 months. So part of the evaluation process now has included going back and taking a look at activities that have been funded, working with our partners to help them to understand the importance of spending the community development block grant funds in a timely manner, and what happens to us, the city, in the event that we do not do that. So going forward, when we come to you with activities, they will be thought out in terms of the greater good of the community, compliance with the consolidated plan, the wishes of council, and the ability to spend the money if selected for funding within a relatively short period of time. The opportunity to work with Public Works Department on a project like this, I hope, is one of several that we do. We have developed a very good relationship over the years, and I'd like to think that that will continue as we look at projects within the downtown area as well as other parts of the city where CDBG funds could possibly be used to provide services for persons who are considered to be low and moderate income. Next slide. Prior to today, and at a subsequent, at a prior meeting, we talked about making an amendment to the 2024 consolidated plan. And part of the reason for that amendment was because of the fact that with respect to housing, housing is a major challenge in this community, no doubt about that. It is an especially large challenge if you identify as income eligible, and there are very, very limited options. It is especially true if you are a survivor of domestic violence and you're looking to start over again, but you don't have the resources to do it, or you don't have, or the lack of housing opportunities in the community are impediments. So this amendment allows a helpmate to actually look for housing for persons who are survivors of domestic violence outside of the city, but within the county. We have always set forth in Asheville that CDBG funds would be used within the city of Asheville. So this amendment allows us to address this issue only for survivors of domestic violence. For our upcoming program year, we'll look at expanding that a little bit, but we believe that our priority was to address this with our partner HelpMate, and we think that this will be a viable solution that will allow them to do their job better on behalf of persons who qualify under this category. The second one, the Asheville Regional Housing Consortium approved an amendment. I'm sorry, basically this amendment and providing information to you all, but the action was actually taken by the ARHC, and the next step will be for it to appear before council. Next slide. So again, the key takeaways with respect to the Patton Street project, we are advocating, we are recommending that the council give consideration to amending our consolidated plan so that we are able to earmark these funds for this activity to help us address our timeliness issue. Second, with respect to the process associated with how we've gone about notifying the public and communicating with our downtown partners, I've discussed that. The very nature of the partnership with our Public Works Department to be able to undertake this project will be huge, and hopefully you'll concur with that when it goes before council next week. At this time, I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dennis. Very thorough review of CDBG. Appreciate it. Councilwoman, do you have any questions? One of the requests I had made was that we list our previous allocations of CDBG. I'm wondering if you will do that for Tuesday. I have a specific reason for asking because I understand all of this and it's wonderful, but I still have a reservation around committing some of our treasured, precious housing monies for infrastructure. And I get it. I understand you've stated your argument very well. I just still hold that value personally. And I think it's helpful to have some awareness of what we did allocate for. One other question just about
Absolutely.
In general, I received a concern from one of the awardees in the past. Are there some administrative changes around how this money will go out in the community and be monitored and come back? It's particular to home repairs, I believe, was the concern.
There will be some administrative changes. And let me qualify that statement by saying this. Asheville has a very, very wonderful community development block grant program. We have seen changes in personnel over the years, and of course, I represent the latest iteration of that. I'm also old, so it means I've been around the block a few times with respect to the program. And part of my responsibility to you as council people is to provide recommendations with regards to the best way to use community development block grant funds and the consequences in the event of improper use. The other part of my responsibility is to look at where we find ourselves right now and to make recommendations on possible tweaks of things that we can do better, that for the most part will allow us to always be in a very good situation that long after I'm gone and my successors come forward, they can say, this has been an absolutely well-run program, and of course, satisfying the concerns of our funding source, HUD. So yeah, there are some things that I will be recommending that I have recommended, and some things will make sense initially. Some things will be a little bit painful, but at the end of the day, it is my thought, and based upon my long time of doing this, that recommendations that I will make will be in the best interest of the city to keep us in compliance, to keep other sources of money, keep our money available, and to be able to identify and use other sources of funds of a federal nature too. So, yes.
Let me be more explicit then. So when we are giving money to nonprofits for emergency home repair to sustain affordable housing in communities, my understanding is now they're being told that a lien will be placed on their home in exchange for what was granted money for the repair. And I just have concerns around that, but maybe I don't need to have that today. Is that baked into these changes today?
It's something that we will talk about, and the short version of that is that it's one of those things, Madam Chair, whereby the federal government and the city as a pass-through provides funding for direct services, in this case, housing, more specifically housing rehabilitation. And the idea behind that program is to address concerns associated with habitability. And I'd like to think that with respect to that, we do a very fine job. We also have a responsibility with respect to those funds anytime we give them away to make certain that there is an assurance that in the event that there is a default, that the city is protected. In our current situation, we have an issue whereby and I'll use you as an example, if you qualified for one of our housing programs and you received funding, CDBG funding for the activity and the work was done, and you sold your house a year later, 2 years later, who would be responsible to HUD to repay that money? So it's not necessarily that it's
Are the monies not a grant to the homeowner? They're being deployed by the nonprofit as a loan to them this whole time?
So be it a grant or a loan to an outside organization, there is a requirement that there is proof that that activity benefited a low to moderate income person. Okay? That is what we get checked on annually by HUD.
Are these changes, Dennis, are these changes in today's changes? Are they?
They're
okay.
not.
Maybe we don't need to bog down this committee with this thing, and maybe I can talk to staff more about it directly because it's not being presented today. Just I'm flagging a little concern from that particular organization who's done a long history of these home repairs. So, okay, not for today. Okay, so what we're looking at today is a recommendation to use these remaining dollars. Yeah, did you have a question?
I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
When you have those conversations, I like to be in on those conversations because based on what you said, I share your concerns.
Okay.
So I like.
Yeah, maybe we can just make it a future agenda item to understand that because it sounds like Dennis is going to bring a proposal around such, so maybe there'd be some exhaustive. If today was an example, it will probably be exhaustive in detail. Thank you. Okay.
And that will be part of the discussion next month that we were originally going to have today. But with respect to your question, Madam Chair, again, part of my responsibility is to provide to you recommendations on the best and highest uses of funds, and then also to protect the city in the event so that we are able to stay in compliance with the very nature of our federal programs. But more on that later, more during the...
Thank you. So any questions for Dennis or staff on what is in front of us today? Moving a suggestion, a recommendation to council about using the $300,000 remaining CDBG compiled historic unused funds for the sidewalk project. Well, I have one little question. Do we know if those funds are public services or non-public services, or is it just a mix, or did we ever?
Some of those funds come from unused public services or activities that you all earmarked, yes.
All right, Councilwoman, if you have any other questions or not, perhaps a motion is welcome at this time.
Chair Turner, you've actually already taken action on all of
Oh.
the subcomponents. And so
You
this
don't
is
need
more of an
action.
information item, and then there will be a public hearing on Tuesday.
Okay, actually, I see that down on the agenda. Thank you. Okay, so no action or vote required. We'll move this to council on Tuesday. And I assume they'll probably get some more of this detailed information in their staff report as well, which will help them. Okay, all right. Well, that is it for item number 3 on our agenda today. Item number 4 is public comment. Katie, do we have anyone that is called in?
One moment, let me check. No, we do not.
Okay. Councilwoman, unless you have any last thoughts to share, we can adjourn. Is everyone ready to go? Okay. Thank you for your time, everyone, and we will see you soon. Have a good rest of your day. We are adjourned.